this is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Both championships are currently a tussle for best of the rest, with the points leaders gaining a large gap on everyone else. But today, it's going to be hard to get away from anyone. Le Mans' long straights will offer a chance to keep in touch with anyone within reasonable distance. Is this the opportunity the underdogs needed to get back in the game? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch Round 7 of the iRacing Kamel GT Series. And you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel and the iRacing Esports Network. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Nick Schmeg. Behind the scenes is our director, the Dr. Amjad Yaman, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Nick, draft tracks seem to be a theme today after we just finished the Monza Combined Oval Course with the Lotus 49 series. All I can say is, here we go again.
Yeah, it definitely does look like that trend is going to continue here today. To call the layout of this track the Kamel GT series we're using today, the historic layout, is fitting to say the least. Sports cars first raced here 96 years ago, when the first 24 hours of Le Mans was run in 1923. And while they didn't use cars as technologically advanced as we'll see today from about half a century later, this is one of those tracks that really looks fitting when paired alongside the Audis and Nissans for today's race. The track here at Le Mans has two distinct parts to it: the road course section and, well, the backstretch. Many racetracks that we travel to are less than 3.7 miles. The straightaway itself here, originally built on public roads, alone is 3.7 miles. After that, though, there are some turns for these drivers to tackle today, as well as some windy chicanes and a little bit of elevation change as well. In fact, more than a few turns. There's 31 of them. That doesn't quite get up there with the Nordschleife, but many times people compare the need for endurance and consistency between that track in Germany and Le Mans, which spans 8.5 miles or about 13.5 kilometers. Today, the drivers are going to need to have a great deal of speed along with a great deal of finesse, and that combination, as well as staying out of trouble, will be the key for success. To take a better look at the historic layout of this historic venue, let me send you down to the track for the GSRC lap guide.
All right, we've got Clayton McLeod in the GSRC Nissan, so let's do a lap around Le Mans. Though the front stretch is by far not the longest straight on the track, you gain quite a bit of speed flying along here. Hold the car off to the left to give yourself a nice wide angle into the Dunlop curve, and then throw out the anchors to slow it up for the Dunlop chicane. Be careful with the sleeping policemen at the apexes because they can damage the car. Over the hill, we dive under the Dunlop bridge and then plunge down into the Chapel rundown. That leads directly into the Forest S's, where the line is all important. The hump at the exit will be particularly tricky with the immense power of the Nissan's turbo. Then there's Tertre de Rouge, which goes by lightning fast in this car. It's no less critical to your lap time because it takes you onto the long Mulsanne straight. With all the downforce on the Nissan, you can wait until astonishingly late to get on the binders. Even still, the car is not much use in the gravel, so take care to be tidy through here. Being able to confidently get to the power off the corner is very important, since you won't be braking until Indianapolis. You'll need a big lift for the kink, hold the car off to the right, and then try to safely slow it down for this treacherous bend. Switch sides quickly because Arnage comes up fast. This is one of the slowest corners of the track and embarrassingly easy to loop the car in these lower gears. Smooth throttle application will be very important. Finally, there's the Porsche curves. They start with a scary fast entry, but be sure to hug the inside to set up for bridge. Be brave and keep your foot in it, just don't clout the big blue wall to the outside. Lift as you transition into karting and continue to bleed off speed as the corners get tighter. Take care not to drift too wide in the left-hander or you can get a slowdown penalty. After that, you're flat out through Maison Blanche, and then you get a short breather to get ready for the Ford chicane. It's tempting to take the car in too fast through this first part, but you've got to keep it planted to set up properly for the second part. Don't take too much curb to keep from damaging the car, and then be sure to nail your exit to keep your momentum up on the pit straight. As we cross the line, we've now finished the lap around Le Mans.
You see a lap around Le Mans, at least some of the parts. We can't show you a whole one around here, as they are doing right now. So while we wait for the lap times to come in for qualifying, let's take a glance at the championships that are underway. The GTPs are being led by Fabian Gerber. You can see with the drop weeks, it does bring Arto Iamaki back into it, but really, Gerber's won 4 out of the 6 races so far this season. He's essentially running away with it. Phil Lake behind them has been switching back and forth between the two classes, so not sure that he'll really continue to be in this race. Jungbluth in 4th and then John Keefe in 5th. No changes in the positions for the top 5. Looking at the Light Championship, only 4 cars competing in that this season. Koivisto continues to lead, and it's not too big of a gap back to Johnny Bell, but there's fewer points usually on tap farther down in the field. So Johnny's going to have to start beating Hideki to try and reel him in. Slee and Kopak round out your 4 competitors. Nick, what do the 2 GTO standings look like?
Yeah, first of all, in the top GTO division, it's Rob Olenek, still last week's winner at Oulton Park. That's his 3rd win of the season and his 5th podium. He stays on top of this lead pack. 97 points for him. 17 points behind him is Milan Arnozzi. Has yet to get a win this year, but he has 3 podiums, so he has come close a couple times. A little bit of a switch between 3rd place here. It's actually resulted in a tie between Nick Mukanos and Dennis Neidhart, 2 drivers that have also looked very fast today. They're only 4 points behind Arnozzi, and they are 9 points in front of Ben Laughter, who remains in 5th. We also do have the GTU standings, the amateur category for the Audis. Reed Miller and Sergey Serbin remain 1 and 2, but it's tightened up a little bit. It is now a 5-point gap in between them. Lots to fight for between them. Michael Haynes has dropped 1 spot down to 3rd. That was a tie he had with Sergey going into Oulton Park last week. Caden Bean and James Walker remain 4th and 5th, 29 and 39 points back respectively.
Now let's take a look at what this race itself has in store. We are in round 7, as I mentioned. Now, this is a sprint race. They aren't doing an endurance race here at Le Mans, which might have been a little bit more fitting, but I think drivers will appreciate less time put to the floor down that Mulsanne. That means there's no scheduled pit stop for fuel, although there has been debate on whether or not they will be able to make it if it goes 1 extra lap, which will be close. The scoring goes down to 20th place, where they get 1 point for that. Today's race also, of course, is once again brought to you on the iRacing Esports Network. Make sure and subscribe. That way you can get all of the iRacing Kamel GT series in your YouTube feed every week. Just click the big red button that says subscribe, and you will see all the awesome retro racing here on IESN and GSRC. Now, up at the top of the timing sheets right now for the prototypes is Justin Albrecht, but he actually just wrecked coming out of the Forest S's, so he's not going to be able to come around for a 2nd lap. John Atkinson running 2nd up there. Olenek, once again, proving his speed in this retro machinery. Nick, he's got the provisional pole.
Absolutely. Looking very fast right now. Fast indeed. 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Doesn't sound like a fast lap, but that is around Le Mans. He's got a lead over Reed Miller by about 0.6, but a couple drivers like Trangrade and Laughter still need to set a lap, so I expect to see them up there as well.
Yeah, it looks like a few drivers still coming around. Some of them may have actually missed that first lap with an off track and discounted it. Really hope that's not the case, because, as we mentioned, going to be a little bit tight to try and get their qualifying in. This is Phil Lake sitting 3rd. He's jumped back into the prototypes, the GTPs. See, Ove Trangrade just got his first lap in, but it's only good enough for 5th. That is surprisingly slow for the Norwegian.
Yeah, definitely not where he wants to be. Hopefully he's going to be able to use the draft to his advantage to make his way up through the field. He does have to start back there. Getting
on board with Nick Mukanos, another one of the GTO drivers. gets himself into fourth with his first time around, but he's only got 2 minutes left. He's heading down the long Mulsanne straight into the Mulsanne corner right now. Braking hard, trying to hit that apex. He gets it nicely tucked in there and off the corner. He is on it. Question is this going to be enough time for him to get back to the line? The Californian works his way towards the Indianapolis kink. Ahead of these guys, the GTP drivers are still running in a lot closer to the finish. So we watch Steve Bycroft currently sitting fifth in his time with a 3:19.3. It's about 2 seconds off the pole time, but he's only 12/100ths off of Emerton ahead of him. So if he can cross the line, there's a good chance if he can improve, he will jump up to the second row.
He's looking good through those set of turns there. Got to be real precise here. You don't want one turn to mess up your entire very long lap here.
Through the forward chicane, back to the start-finish line. Stays off those big, tall curbs. These cars do not like them. Does his second lap count? Yes, it does, and it's faster, a 3:18.8. That is good enough for third. He's on the inside of the second row. Artelia is coming around. Newcomer sits in sixth. He'll have just enough time to cross the line. Let's see what he's got underneath him. Second lap going to be a 3:18.7. More than half a second improvement. That's actually faster than Bycroft. He now goes to third. Here comes Mukanos crossing the line. And it is a faster lap for Nick. A 3:40.3 is only good enough for third momentarily, actually. Reed Miller goes to the pole.
Out of nowhere, 3:39.6 for Miller.
Well, that brings us to the starting grid with qualifying over. Justin Albrecht is on the pole for the GTPs with John Atkinson starting in P2. Massimo Artelia will be third with Steve Bycroft starting on the outside of row 2. Philip Lake will be fifth with Luis Emerton next to him in P6. Stephen Warkup will start 7th. Philip Weigert will be 8th. Martin Krejcik 9th. Hideki Koivisto rounds out the top 10. Then you've got Johnny Bell starting in 11th. Marc Jean Girard in 12th place. Don Peak joins us in 13th, and David Sanchez 14th. Then we've got a number of cars that didn't get a lap in the GTPs that will be behind them. Radar Anderson, John Keefe, Mark Schmedling, and Stephen Provost. Nick?
Over in the Audis, it's a smaller field than the Nissans today. Reed Miller, as you saw there, the GTU driver, jumping all the way up to the top of the board with Dennis Neidhart and Rob Olenek going to round out your starting podium. Nick Mukanos and Riley Thompson are going to fall in behind 4th and 5th, while 6th and 7th go to Ove Traingrade and Javier Lago. Aaron Cortez and Michael Haynes, the last two cars to set a qualifying time, while Ben Laughter, Juan Lopez, and Florian Neidl will be rounding out the Audis there for today's race.
See them starting to line up now as they find the grid. It is a rolling start, but they just are going to work their way through the Porsche curves and then be on their way, so we don't have to wait for a full pace lap. Definitely a few of the Audis seem to have been caught out by the off tracks in that qualifying. As some of them have been saying, their first flying lap they had an off, or they made a mistake and then didn't have enough time to get around for the second one. Taking off, they work their way now towards those Porsche curves, behind a Porsche appropriately. 40 minutes on tab today here at Le Mans in France. The only French track so far here on iRacing. There have been calls for a few others. No reports for some coming in, unless you consider Montreal an honorary French track, since that's over in the French portion of Canada. So as they work their way through, you see how almost becomes a little bit street course-like here in portions of the track. As they go by bridge. Series of very fast corners. If they come up to karting here soon, then it's past Maison Blanche through the Ford chicane. That's going to be very tricky for the green flag as we now get the flyover with the traditional tricolor being sprayed by the jets. We've got a little bit of time, so we're not missing anything as we get a nice little air show here before the start of the race, just over the front stretch, the pit straight. But they always give us a nice show here in iRacing, all in beautiful formation. So, pace car is now in. Justin Albrecht has control of the field. And already it looks like they're starting to get single file, so a bunch of the cars not interested in trying to go too wide through those chicanes. Green flag is out here at Le Mans. Justin Albrecht is off like a shot. Behind them, not much action as most drivers have thinned out. They come up to the Dunlop chicane for the first time. We're going to see any sort of attempt at passes. It is all pretty timid into here, so let's go back to the GTOs.
Everyone that started in an even starting position got a good jump because Dennis Neidhart in second has gone to the lead. He passes Reed Miller. Nick Mukanos from fourth jumps Olenek for third. Lots of shuffling back there. Riley Thompson able to stay in fifth, but they also get single file back in the Audis.
Well, it looks like Javier Lago had some sort of problem, but I'm not sure what exactly. He was slow on the course. We'll get back to him in a little bit. Already, our leaders are on the Mulsanne straight. Now, I know these GTO cars, Nick, are going to definitely have some draft trains, but what about the GTPs? Is there enough of a slipstream at these high speeds?
I think we might see a couple slingshots back and forth between those GTPs and the Nissans. It's going to be very rapid drafting up there, as already you can see them bunch up a lot.
Albrecht, though, has got himself a little bit of a gap to Atkinson behind, but Atkinson starting to reel him in. There you can see Emerton and the red and white machine challenged by Artelia. And then now they're getting boxed up behind. Bycroft and Lake have nowhere to go. We ride on board with in and around the lake. Coming up to Mulsanne corner, they're going to have to get themselves settled out soon, or it might be a little tricky into this hard braking zone. Lake's going to brake sort of early, but Emerton certainly isn't. He's got the inside, pulls away, and it looks like Artelia going to lose out to Phil Lake, who slips himself into fourth.
Back in the Audis, we have a pack race for the lead right now going down the Mulsanne straightaway. Almost 3 wide a couple of times. It is an absolute traffic jam. Rob Olenek able to overtake everyone out of nowhere. Riley Thompson as well able to close in on these guys.
That's Neidhart on the outside that you see. Reed Miller to the inside in the Dirty Torque machine. He's got a little bit of a better run as they fly through Gulf up towards Indianapolis. He's got a tow from his teammate. He's going to look around the outside. This could get hairy into this fast kink. And it looks like Neidhart knows it. He backs out. They go single file. I believe we've had a problem with Artelia and actually a bunch of GTP cars. Get to that in just a second. Now working their way out of Indianapolis through Arnage on their way towards the Porsche curves.
Reed Miller able to get back that Audi lead over Olenek. Neidhart trying to hold off Thompson for third behind him. And Ove Traingrade has fallen severely behind him.
Neidhart trying to work the long way around into the Porsche curves. Thompson still holding side by side, not willing to give it up yet. They better get single file or they're going to lose a lot of time to the cars ahead. Finally, Thompson gives up the ghost as Neidhart solidifies P3. We've got problems with the GTPs. Krejcik has turned the wrong way on the front stretch. Trying to get turned around. He finds himself a gap.
Looks like he ran into problems with Philip Weigert.
We got the replay. And through the forward chicane. Oh, and just completely ran into the 24. Expected Krejcik to accelerate a lot quicker, and that sent Martin all the way to the back of his field. Now, I completely missed what happened to Massimo, but I believe it was in Arnage. If not, it was in Indianapolis. He's obviously in quite a bit of a fight. I believe that's Bycroft there in the yellow car.
Oh, looks like all by himself.
A little bit off track. And it was in a side-by-side battle with Bycroft. Oh, and there she goes around. Going back to our leader, Justin Albrecht finds himself well down in fourth. And I believe Albrecht got a slowdown penalty out of Tertre Rouge. So that gives the lead to Atkinson. Lake is chasing. Granted, Lake more, if anything, battling with Lewis Emerton. You can see them side by side as they hit the corner at the end of the straight one more time. Lake is going to let Emerton through. Clearly, the slowdown penalty's a real bugbear today, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. Come into effect early. I'm guessing when the track is more clogged early, becoming an issue.
And the leaders in the GTO were 3 wide. Unfortunately, we won't be able to show it for a moment, but I can just report to you that things are getting incredibly intense up at the front. There we have them. And it's Neidhart who comes out in the front, but look at this mess. Neidhart, though, way too late on the brakes. Miller tries to get through, but can't find it. Looks like Riley Thompson going to try and challenge him. Olenek is fallen back to fourth, and then that's Uwe Trangerade. You see trailing all 4 of them.
Thompson being really aggressive. Look at him way outside there, almost just about in the grass.
My goodness, this is not going to end well. Coming up to Indianapolis, 2 wide into there. Thompson going to have the inside into the left-hand portion of the corner. That's going to get him a good shot, but Miller's not giving up. He's still got a nose inside as they come to Arnage. Oh, they come together. Both of them manage to get the car going. Oh, but Riley Thompson hits the wall in his recovery. Neidhart noses into him. Everybody else manages to avoid it.
They just about had that saved, too. That's a heartbreaking crash there, especially with Neidhart just nowhere to go.
See them both foot to the floor trying to use that 4-wheel drive to get it back forward. And poor Neidhart just was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
A little bit of contact with Trangerade there as well. I don't think he picked up any damage from it, though. Very little, if any.
So that means that Olenik's now your leader in the GTOs. Miller's second, and Trangerade is third. Neidhart, unfortunately, both Neidhart and Thompson had to take to the pits for repairs.
Yeah, that could not have worked out better for the Dirty Torque guys who get away from that one.
Now leading 1-2 in this race. Let's check back in on our GTP leader, John Atkinson, a 3-second gap to Lewis Emerton. So Atkinson taking full advantage of Albrecht having that slowdown penalty and the battling going on for second behind him to start to scamper away.
Yeah, they're side by side behind him. That is helping him.
That's another Dirty Torque car looking for a podium. Phil Lake. He's got the inside up to the Mulsanne corner. He's going to be brave on the brakes, though. This little kink, this downforce on this car really pushes the limit of what you're brave enough to do. Emerton going to be the brave one this time, though. He gets ahead in the braking zone. They're being chased by Albrecht. He's starting to reel them back in. He could yet get in the fight, at least for a second place.
See what kind of slipstream Phil Lake gets on Emerton here, if any, that he can do anything with. Looks like he's going to take a peek to the inside.
He's going to be able to get by. Emerton going to break a little early up into Indianapolis, comes back to the racing line. He's got a long time to go, still 30 minutes left in this race. No need to make risky maneuvers quite yet. Really loses it coming out of Arnage, though.
Yeah, really heavy into that turn for the Lake. That's going to really help Emerton get back around him here. And he had the slipstream to do it as well.
And you can see it's not just Albrecht back there. Bycroft also is trying to catch up to these two. And I'd say that Albrecht is just about there now. And as all this was happening, Ove Trangrade has now gotten himself to the front of the GTOs. That was a simple slipstream pass to go by Olenek. Very boxy cars, very big wake opened up behind them. You can see how much speed he got just from the toe. So that puts the number 2. Well, he was in second, and Trangrade's now been repassed by Olenek during that replay. Going to see a lot of that today.
Not too far behind him for fourth. There's a battle as well between Mukanos and Ben Laughter. They have found each other.
These two coming up towards the Porsche curves. And Mukanos a little bit defensive up into this right-hander. Laughter just follows back in line as they go through bridge. We've got actually a monstrous gap to the car behind. Javier Lago is 21 seconds back. Considering they're only on lap 3, it's incredible how much they pulled away from the cars behind. Meanwhile, as we go back to the prototypes, Emerton and Lake have been joined by Albrecht. And in fact, now it is a Dirty Torque roadblock. And poor Emerton can't really find a way through.
Yeah, he took a peek to the middle. I think he thought better of that. He's still looking, but he's going to stay behind for now.
Not interested in trying anything silly. We're going to come up to the braking here into Mulsanne, and that is where the door opens up. Emerton going right on by Phil Lake, but in all that battling, look at this. They're starting to lose touch with Albrecht. That battle was there when Albrecht approached them from behind, and now it's going to still continue as he streaks off into the distance.
Yeah, you just mentioned how huge these gaps were in between the drivers, but that's how quickly one can open up. It's also how quickly one can shut down. Right behind him, Steve Bycroft continues to close in on him. If they keep battling like this, I think he's definitely going to catch him.
Absolutely. Now, it makes me wonder if Albrecht has actually got better pace than Atkinson. It could reel him in for battle for the lead as well. It's about 4 seconds between first and second place. Emerton and the number 11 has had plenty of podiums in the past. I'm sure he'd liked another notch on his belt. They work their way through the Porsche curves. I can tell you that Trangrade and Olenek are still close together, but they've dropped Reed Miller, curiously. Golden Lake having problems here. Emerton still hasn't been able to get by. In fact, he probably will want to if he's being held up by the Dirty Torque Nissan in front of him.
Absolutely. See if he can slingshot around him. Not quite down here, but once they hit the Mulsanne straightaway again.
Yeah, he's dropping back a little bit. It's not dire quite yet. Work their way through the Dunlop chicane. Bycroft definitely on the back of them now. The number 1 car currently sitting in P5, also eyeing these podium spots. Lead swaps around once more, and the GTOs Trangrade ahead of Olenek. You could see, well, you can't see because there he is. I was going to say you could see Reed Miller and how far he had fallen back. There we're finally getting flashes of him in the background. Unless we get a lot of fighting between Trangrade and Olenek, or if Reed just has great pace, I think his chance at a win may have slipped through his fingers.
He's really lost touch. But he's got time still, 25 minutes, for something to happen.
And as we ride on board with Olenek here, I can tell you that Bycroft has gotten by Emerton, though that's going to change back, and they're losing touch with Philip Lake ahead of them.
Phil Lake was just recently struggling on the last lap. Seems like this is going much better for him now with Emerton, or with Bycroft rather, joining the party here.
They'll hit the Mulsanne corner. Oh, and struggling to get the power down. Both Emerton and Bycroft once again losing out to Phil Lake. Behind all this, we've been missing some of the battles for the mid-pack. Koivisto and Stephen Warkup have been fighting for 8th position. And then as well, you can see the side-by-side action between Krejcik and Artilia, both drivers who have fallen down the order from early problems in this race.
Yeah, both of these battles side by side down the straightaway right now. Not really an advantage to one or the other car. Just a pure all-out drag race.
Down into Indianapolis, it's going to be Koivisto who is the victor this time. That was the battle. What about the war? We'll see who comes out ahead. I can tell you that Stephen Provost unfortunately had a little spin. We don't need to go to it. Just coming out of Mulsanne corner, got turned around and lost positions. Meanwhile, Phil Lake in the Porsche curves finds himself in the grass, and I think this was driver error.
Yeah, it looks like he just got too hot through there and lost it.
Two positions streamed by in a flash. That was Bycroft and Emerton you saw go by. But then it stops there. Anderson too far back to take advantage, who is in P6. Lake now in 5th position. Oh, and did something happen to Artilia? He's blanked out on my screen. Seeing if he had an incident. I believe so. Checking to see if it was just
not seeing anything.
Internet. Yeah, no, it's internet connection. So unfortunately, Artilia falling victim to one of the idiosyncrasies of internet racing. As we come back to this battle for the lead, and the GTOs, Olenek, the car ahead that you see, in the Dirty Torque Audi. Ove Trangrade giving chase, we ride on board with now. Oh, and more problems for Warkup we're hearing. Is this also in the Porsche curves? No, this is in the Dunlop chicane.
It is, however, all by himself. It looks like he was trying to chase down Hideki Koivisto and may have just overdriven it.
That turbo lag has caught many a Nissan driver out here on iRacing. The Canadian settles back into 11th after that 360.
Did a good job keeping it off the wall, though. Came very close.
Sometimes that's the important thing. Haven't had too many cars find the wall so far at this race, and we're already halfway through. Most problems seem to be running into one another or just simple self-spins. As we come back to Bycroft and Emerton, Luis can't seem to get away from the action today. Out of Mulsanne corner, the 11 will come out on top this time. From the 007 cam back at Steven. This is now very much a battle for a podium position with Lake having fallen well back. Come up to Indianapolis, and though Steve gets close, looks like he's not interested quite yet. I asked the question earlier, Nick, on whether or not Albrecht can run down Atkinson, and though... Oh, and more problems for Warcup again. This time he had Jean Girard as well involved. Were these two separate incidents? No, they were not. You're going to see contact into the Mulsanne corner. Just turns him around with a slight tip.
Just very slight contact between them. Enough to send them both around, and lots of time and ground lost for both of them, even though I don't think too much damage got picked up there by either of them.
And speaking of damage, does Reed Miller have damage? Look at him just get swamped by Laughter.
Oh, wow.
And Mukanos.
I can't imagine the draft between Laughter and Mukanos was that big.
Maybe
I wonder if he had a missed shift or something.
I was just going to say that. Either a missed shift or a cut course penalty.
Yeah.
Whatever the case, he's paying dearly. And I think he may be close enough. Yeah, the draft is just about bringing him back into it. Saved his bacon. So as they come towards the end of the Mulsanne, and once again we see a swap back and forth between Mukanos and Laughter. That's for P3. Let's stay with this, but just to get to the point that I mentioned earlier, Albrecht is closing on Atkinson bit by bit, so we'll want to go to that battle when that gets a little bit closer. I think the lead is not assured for John.
Both of those drivers looking for their first win this year, of course.
Another move around to the outside with Mukanos overtaking Laughter. Yeah, Albrecht has got a win here or there, but his spotty attendance certainly hasn't helped it. Ooh, they're going to go side by side through the Indianapolis kink. Laughter better on the brakes, but can he make the corner? Big slide there for Mukanos. Catches the car just in time as Reed Miller comes around the outside and takes away fourth. Ooh, and a bit of a bump from behind, too.
Just a little boost down the straightaway.
A hurry up and go. So, I was mentioning earlier, yeah, Albrecht and Atkinson both haven't won, as you mentioned. The wins have really been hogged by Iamaki and Gerber so far this season.
Yeah, absolutely. They're the only two drivers to have a win so far this season. Gerber with 4 of them, Iamaki with 2. Same situation in the Audis, really. Only Hagner, Yoni Hagner and Rob Olenek have taken wins this year, 3 apiece for them.
Switching back to the battle between Bycroft and Emerton, you saw Justin Albrecht behind Atkinson. Our eagle-eyed viewers may have noticed that Albrecht did not have the best of corners, and he fell back, actually. What was a little under 3 seconds is now nearly 4 seconds. Already down to 17 minutes left to go. Ooh, bad exit off of Arnage by Bycroft. Really dropped off the back of Emerton.
Yeah, we've seen how the slipstream in the Nissans is not nearly as effective as the slipstream in the Audis, just due to their high speeds. So you really don't want to make too many of those mistakes, because it's not going to be nearly as easy to reel them in.
And speaking of comparing the two classes, this is one of the few races where we haven't really had to talk about... Oh, we got a problem with Cortez.
Yeah, just going by
replay here.
There.
We haven't had to
he
talk
made
about...
contact with Albrecht.
Oh. Oh, and Albrecht got the wall hard. But we have missed in all that Albrecht has DNF'd. He is out of this race. Emerton gets promoted to second. Bycroft now to third.
Wow. Of all tracks, I would not have expected multi-class racing to strike here at Le Mans. It was one of the tricky parts of the track, though.
I was just mentioning that, too. That we haven't had to talk about it. Commentator's curse strikes yet again. John Atkinson dodges a bit of a bullet. What was getting very uncomfortable in terms of the gap between himself and second as he goes around Florian Nidell. Lewis Emerton is now 8.5 seconds back from Atkinson, so much more comfortable gap for the number 10 car.
And speaking of Emerton, we mentioned how Bycroft was falling off a little more. That gap seems to have opened up a little bit more even for Emerton over Bycroft.
In fact, Phil Lake starting to close as well. We ride on board with Rob Olenek looking back at Trangarade. This is the battle for the lead in the GTOs, which is still incredibly close. They continue to drop Nick Mukanos, who is about 2.5 seconds behind them. I'm looking through my timing and scoring, and interestingly enough, two of our movers of the race are two that did not get a qualifying time in. Anderson from 15th to 5th, Keefe from 16th to 6th.
You know, those two drivers are fast. We've seen them before this season put on quite a few shows.
Yeah, Keefe certainly has had experience trying to come through the field. So this is no stranger to him. Sure, he'd love to try and break into the top 5, but he's going to have to hope for some drama in front to really do anything with that. This is Anderson just ahead of him. Just under 8 seconds, splitting the pair. Now down to 13 minutes to go. And even better news for our leader in the GTPs, John Atkinson. Emerton does not seem to really have the pace to try and run him down. It has increased now to 10.5 seconds from the number 10 to the number 11 car. We're right on board with Bycroft, just behind Emerton.
All three of these cars kind of bunching up here a little bit. I'm sure that's the exact opposite of what Lewis Emerton would like to see in his mirror. See not just Bycroft, but also Phil Lake join the picture.
Lake has been a little bit up and down so far this race. They come through the forward chicane. Ooh, nice and tidy for Phil Lake. Way smoother than what we saw from Bycroft, and that gives him a chance, a whiff of the podium. Lake follows him down the front stretch. Will he attack into the Dunlop chicane? He decides not to for now, though Bycroft does go defensive, obviously feeling a little bit threatened.
Phil Lake switching back to the Nissan this week. He was in the Audi last week at Alton Park, got a podium there, and actually he's the only driver this season to have a podium in both classes. So he'd love to add to that collection.
Bo knows. Well, they come on to the Mulsanne straight once more, and this might be what Philip Lake was waiting for. He rides behind in the tire tracks of Steve Bycroft, starts to close in, but Bycroft doing the same to Emerton. Are they both going to be able to slingshot by Luis? The UKNI driver going to stay to the left. Bycroft goes by. And Lake boxed in a little bit now.
Phil Lake took a peek up the middle. Now he's going to take a peek to the right. And he's going to take that momentum with him. And I think he's going to be able to get side by side here with Bycroft. But can he clear him?
Nick, with your NASCAR experience, you need to teach these guys about side draft.
Hopefully that would work in the Nissan.
Well, I don't see anybody trying it quite yet. They're coming up to the braking zone of the Mulsanne corner. Who's going to come out ahead? Emerton's the one sort of boxed in behind both of them. Steve Bycroft still side by side. No one willing to give in now here late stages in the race. And finally, Phil Lake gets it done, passed Bycroft, but had to get his elbows out.
You mentioned taking the NASCAR technique of side drafting that they can use. Hopefully they don't use the bump draft, though. They're getting awfully close.
We've seen the Audis do that before.
Yes.
Oh, still, wow, this is getting intense. And though Lake had the inside into Indianapolis, Bycroft carries the speed better. He's now going to be in second place. Said it at the start of this race, did not expect it to be these characters, but it is a battle for best of the rest today. As they come up towards the Porsche curves, should be mostly single file, so we've got an opportunity to check back in on the GTO drivers and how their battle has been going. Olenek and Trangerade continue to pull away from Mukanos. It is now 13 seconds back to third. These two will probably come down to the final lap, possibly even the final corners, on who can come away with this one. But Mukanos has a little bit of company of his own. Laughter has been swapping back and forth with him for the final spot on the podium.
Yeah, that was a three-car battle for a little bit. Reed Miller was up there in contention with them. He's been really falling back from that second group, which is now just Mukanos and Laughter. So he looks like he's going to finish 5th today because he's got a long ways back to Javier Lago in 6th.
I'm frankly a bit surprised that Reed Miller is so off the pace at this point. I feel like something might be wrong because he certainly looked fast in qualifying. I believe we had another car with an issue, Jean Girard, and the tail of the GTPs. I think this is another incident in Arnage.
I was watching Jean Girard earlier in the race. In the early stages, first couple laps, his car looked a little unsettled.
And you would think by Mark's name that maybe he's running his home track, but he's actually hailing from Club West, of all places. Up in the prototypes, we can't get away from this fight. Phil Lake and Steve Bycroft now side by side, but they've dropped Luis Emerton. I wonder if he also got a slowdown penalty somewhere along the line. There you can see the red and white machine well far back from these two. Last time up to the Mulsanne corner, it was side by side into there. This time, Phil Lake drops in into the slipstream. Now he gets a little dose of it. He comes back beside Bycroft. How's this one going to play out? Are they going to be as aggressive? Boy, Bycroft aggressive on the brakes at least.
Yeah, Phil Lake, I think, actually went off the gas there for a little bit just to slot back in behind Bycroft to pick up a little bit of draft. Almost worked out for him. He got side by side with him again, but still, Bycroft continues to lead him.
At 3 and some minutes a lap and 7.5 minutes left to go. I believe we're about 2 laps left. Bycroft stays ahead through Indianapolis. Lake trailing behind. Emerton continues to lose as what was 2 seconds is now 3 seconds between the 4 and the 11. Work their way towards the Porsche curves. We've had another little bit of a fight farther down in this GTP field for 7th place. Koivisto against Krejcik, right up on top of one another.
We saw Koivisto battle just a few hours ago in the Lotus 49 race this morning at a draft track at Monza. Currently leading over Krejcik.
In fact, Koivisto doing a fine job. Started this race in 10th. He runs in 7th. Krejcik's only gone up 1 position, having gridded in 9th. Not missing anything at the front for the moment. Drake not doing too bad, adapting from a car with nearly no downforce to a car that's got gobs of downforce. And do we have a problem with Anderson? Yeah, Radar Anderson finds himself spinning out of the Ford chicane. Did he have some help from the curbs? He started to lose it before he got there, it looks like.
Yeah, I think he just missed his braking point there, it looked like. Seemed to lock it up, which sent him onto the curb. So yeah, lost it a little bit before.
Out in the middle of no man's land, Anderson retains 5th place, but is now 20 seconds behind Emerton. John Keefe closes it down to a scant 5 seconds. As we come back to the GTO lead, once again, Olenek leads Trangerade. Behind them, swapping back and forth is Mukanos and Laughter. Now, we've got Juan Lopez coming in for a stop. Did he have... Oh, wow, a number of drivers coming in, so maybe this track was a little too thirsty.
Wow. That might be concerning for the leaders.
Certainly could be.
Especially those that are running by themselves if they don't have drafting partners.
I did say that the drivers were somewhat concerned about if they could make it, but that was all talk about if they make 13 laps instead of 12. And they're coming up on lap 12 now. As the prototypes swap positions yet again on screen. Lake to the inside of Indianapolis easily gets through on Bycroft. And I think actually we are going to get 13 laps. Maybe that's why we're seeing people pit.
You know, the driver that's going to concern the most, I think, is actually ahead of these guys battling for second. John Atkinson Jr., who's run practically this entire race by himself up there.
It's going to be extremely tight.
Yeah.
They're doing about 3-minute 20 something for these laps. John Atkinson is just going to get 12 laps, it looks like, because they're just going under now. So it will be a 12-lap race.
Hopefully that's good news for them.
So that means this is the white flag that we're getting as he crosses the line. Atkinson put it on the front row. And then after a slowdown penalty for Albrecht, has not looked back since. We see Rob Olenek, who is leading the way in the GTOs, now getting lapped by the prototypes. Battle for second going through.
Yeah, it looks like they're splitting Lake and Bycroft quite a bit as well.
You're right. Bycroft losing out big time. He's now 3 seconds back as they hit the Mulsanne straight. I do not think that is close enough for the draft to kick in for the #1 car.
That's going to help Luis Emerton. I don't know if he's going to have enough time, but he did get a lot closer to Bycroft than he was because of that, as he slips on by Olenek now.
Yeah, we can see from the chopper view that he's getting closer and closer, so Emerton could yet get himself onto the podium on this final lap. He's going to be pushing hard to try and reel in that yellow and black machine. Prototypes can't, or excuse me, the GTOs, we can't forget them. With Olenek and Trangrade still fighting it out to see who can take away honors today.
Trangrade still following. Is he going to wait till the last lap to make a slingshot move? And then how good is his defense going to be?
Yeah, we're on the white flag lap right now, so clearly not interested here. Maybe on the way to Indianapolis? That's a relatively long straight. A little closer coming off the corner.
Yeah, you got a big run in there.
Coming down to Indianapolis. Reels him in, reels him in. Goes around the outside. I imagine that Olenik's going to try and fight this as best he can. He's all the way fully past. Can't quite outbrake him. Oh, but yes, he can. Down into the second portion. Indianapolis, maybe just a little too hot. 2 wheels into the gravel. He has to come back behind Trangarade.
Trangarade able to hold down the position for now. Another straightaway here, though, for Olenik to try to get a run.
Did Trangarade go too soon? Is this enough of a stretch for the slipstream to give him a chance? Olenik seems to think so. They're coming up to the Porsche curves. He's got the inside for the first corner, but not for the second one. Will it switch back eventually? Can he hold the inside? He's trying his damnedest. Up ahead of them, John Atkinson is going to take the victory in the GTP class today here at Le Mans. Back to these GTOs. Lap coming to an end. Trangarade couldn't quite hold him off through the S's. After the Porsche curves, there's very little opportunity. Down into the break into the Ford chicane. Olenik's got the edge as long as he accelerates clean off the corner. He's got it. Rob Olenik with the victory in France. Down in the prototypes for 7th position. Krejcik and Koivisto have been fighting, but right now it is Krejcik ahead.
And it looks like he's going to hold on to that as well. Koivisto just not able to get a big enough run out of there.
I believe that's all of our close battles already done. Drivers at this point are just streaming across the line. So let's take a look at this battle and how he managed to get by. There's the first pass through Indianapolis where Trangarade finally gets in front. Rob tries to set him up.
Gonna see Olenik just kind of dip down to the bottom here at the last second. Nothing Trangarade could have done at that point. Kind of a crossover move.
Uses it just perfectly, gets alongside. You can see Trangarade very strong on the brakes as he fights it as best he can up into bridge. Olenik not giving up the ghost, and once again continuing to apply pressure. Eventually it pays back with the inside into karting. That's when he seals the deal. So with that, we're going to take a quick break here on the Global Sim Racing channel here in France. We'll come back with driver interviews as well as the official results. And if you stick around on screen, you can see all the upcoming races here on the GSRC. Welcome back to the French countryside here at Le Mans. And in the end, a bit of a newcomer. No, not completely, because he's raced here before. John Atkinson manages to get himself a win. Although there were times that he could have been a little bit nervous. Everybody else seemed to have their own issues and came away with a 7-second gap over Phil Lake, who gets another podium in these prototype cars. Steve Bycroft follows him home in third. Emerton couldn't quite run them down. He settles for fourth place, and Radar Anderson from 15th to 5th. John Keefe follows him with the same positions gained, 16th to 6th. For the Hoosier, Martin Krejcik takes 7th. Hideki Koivisto just behind him across the line in P8, and Mark Schmeiding in P9. Stephen Workup with some problems today has to settle for 10th, and then Johnny Bell finishes 11th. Marc-Jean Girard had a few spins out there. He finishes 12th. Don Peak takes 13th. And the last of our cars to finish on the prototypes was David Sanchez. Nick?
15th overall, but first in the Audis. Win number 4 comes today for Rob Olenek. Win number 4 of the season. Out of the 7 races so far, he's won more than half of them at this point. It's looking very good so far of a season for Olenek. He just beats out Traingrade with that last lap pass you saw, and behind them there was a battle all race long between Ben Lafter and Nick Mukanos. Ben Lafter is going to be the last car on the podium, and Reed Miller, the pole sitter in the Audis, he's going to wind up in 5th. Javier Lago will be in 6th right behind them. Juan Lopez ran into some problems with Florian Neidl behind him, also running into some problems. They were all on the lead lap. Michael Haynes, Aaron Cortez, Dennis Neidhart, Riley Thompson, the last of the Audis in there, but you can see also all of the GTP, the DNFs of the day.
Got our winner in the GTOs ready to talk to us. Rob Olenek certainly had to fight for this one. Rob, you and Uwe certainly seem to have a bit of a battle on your mind much of the race as you swapped back and forth here and there. But then tell us about the last lap and what was your mind going in? Did you have a plan?
For being in front, there's not a good plan. I knew Ove was waiting lap after lap after lap. If I was behind, I would have liked to have made the pass going into Indianapolis, because I think it's harder going into the Porsche curves. But it was all on him, so he got it done there. And I tried my hardest to just get my nose up there going into the Porsche curves. And that was an awesome side-by-side battle with him. I mean, I think that's the longest I've battled through there with anyone. Usually it's over before that.
Yeah, we went back special to take a look at that on the replay. That was impressive stuff. Let's rewind back to the start of the race, where we had 3 wide on occasions for the lead. Neidhart in there and various other drivers. Were you getting a little scared with how frantic it was getting, that someone would run into someone?
Yeah, it was pretty aggressive driving in the beginning. I couldn't believe it. I mean, 3 wide, it felt like it was wider than that. I mean, I was doing it though. It's like I kind of got caught up in it. I'm going way off the left side of the track. I actually went off and was like bumping around in the grass at one point. I think right before there was a little accident, maybe with Riley or something. I don't know. It was a little before that.
So from one long track to another, you head to the Nürburgring, the 24-hour layout next week. Do you anticipate that you'll perform as well?
I think I should do pretty well there. I raced the Audi there last time, not at the longest one, but I think I did pretty well. So hopefully it'll be the same thing. Hopefully Yanni will be back and he'll show us what true speed is there.
He always seems to manage to have a leg up on everybody. Well, congratulations on the victory today. I think this was well earned.
Okay, thanks, guys. See you later.
That was Rob Olenek winning in the GTOs. I think he meant Yoni, actually. We're going to also hear from second in the GTPs. Nick has caught up with Phil Lake.
I have indeed. Phil Lake, his second podium in a row in this series, but it's in a different class than it was last week. So, Phil, talk about that last lap. Pretty hectic battling you had there with Steve and Luis.
Yeah, I was battling with those guys most of the race. Had that big slide halfway through, and managed to catch back up to them thanks to I think an Audi slowed Louis up, and And then, I knew from yesterday's race we were going to catch the Audis on the last lap. So I wanted to be in front of Steve on the second to last lap so that I would go through the traffic first, and that worked out pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. You had a pretty calm start to the race, it looked like. Was it difficult at all to get through traffic and to fight through everyone? I mean, it didn't seem like a huge problem for anyone today.
No, it's not. It's kind of, there's no point overtaking anybody until you get to the straight, until you get near the end of the race. So a lot of the time you're just quite happy to follow someone through the Porsche curves and through the last two chicanes and wherever else, just because you know you'll get them if you want to on the back straight, and sometimes you decide not to pass on the straight even and just sit behind somebody for a few laps. And then it is just the Audi traffic on the last lap that you have to worry about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of what we saw today. Another thing we saw was a couple guys towards the rear, the middle of the rear of the field have to pit late for fuel. Was that a big concern for any of the leaders up there, especially if it had gone one more lap?
Justin mentioned it to me before the start. But my driving style is pretty good for fuel, so I wasn't too concerned. But I don't know if any of the other guys were getting close at the end. I haven't spoken to them yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Last question before we let you go here today. Are you excited next week for a Nürburgring, or do you want to go back to a rather short track?
I would be looking forward to it, but I'm doing the 24th, so I'm not going to be here next week.
All right. Well, good luck in that, and congratulations on your second place finish today.
Thanks, guys.
That was Phil in and around the lake P2 and the prototypes. One last interview before we go. Fourth place in the GTO's Nick Mukon, or excuse me, fifth place in the. Actually, excuse me, eventually I'll get the right number. Third place in the GTOs. Ben Laughter, as I struggle to get my papers together here, has joined us. And he was racing with Nick Mukana. So it looked like you were the only two able to keep each other company for much of this race, Ben. Did you two ever attempt to try and slingshot to catch up to the top three, or did you just not have pace for it?
Yeah, no, I jacked up qualifying, and so I started from the back, and my goal was to just get through the dudes that I knew I was faster than and try to maintain connection with the front. And I got lucky in that I think Nick got a slowdown on the opening lap, and so I was able to connect up with him, and I was like, yeah, let's leapfrog and do what we can do. End of the day, we didn't have the top two's pace. I'm sure they put on a great show. I look forward to watching it. But we didn't have their pace, but with about 3 laps to go, the gloves came off, and Nick and I went to war.
Sometimes it seems like there's debate on whether the historic or the traditional Le Mans layout is better. What's your opinion? Do you prefer it here without the chicanes, considering how much back and forth it gives?
So this is the first time I've ever driven it without the chicanes. And so for the first hour and a half of practice, I kept taking the chicanes. I didn't realize that you could go straight until someone beat me by 15 seconds. So anyway, it's the first time I've ever done it. And in the Audi, there's no such thing as a straightaway. These things move around so much. You probably put in 50, 100 steering wheel inputs on the Mulsanne just going straight. And it's just sketchy at those speeds. So to me, it's just about equally challenging both ways. I do like that it's easier to stay connected as a group this way, because every time you insert a chicane, it breaks up battles. So I like that, but I don't know that I really care one way or the other, at least in this car. I'd probably hate it in HPD.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Oh boy, the speeds that car would reach. Well, congratulations on managing to get onto the podium despite my best efforts to shuffle you out of there. Hopefully we'll see you in a week's time. Or are you also racing the 24?
Actually, shout out to all the Dirty Torque guys. We are teaming up. Mind Trick and Dirty Torque are teaming up. We're going to be running 2 Porsches and a Ferrari at Nürburgring 24 as sort of a joint team effort. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm sure some of those guys will run Kamel, but I'll be focused on Nürburgring 24 that week.
All right. Well, we'll look for you there. That was Ben Laughter, third place in the GTO class. And it's going to bring us to a close here on the Global Sim Racing channel. A big thank you to the Kamel community for, of course, bringing us back for another season of coverage, and also to iRacing for putting us on IESN. Make sure you subscribe when you get the opportunity. Just go over to their YouTube page and click the big red button. Thanks to the companies that provide the software and hardware for our broadcast listed here on your screen. And additional thanks go out to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks to the team today, Nick, Amjad, and Dougie, with a special thanks to Mick Claridge for helping us behind the scenes. As well, if you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. You can also check us out on social media. We're on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. Don't forget to head on over to our YouTube page and hit that big red subscribe button as well, so that you don't miss a moment on the GSRC. As we mentioned, going over to the ring, that'll be the 24-hour layout for that one, so it won't be too big of an adjustment for those who race both. That'll be Saturday, May 4th at 1 p.m. Eastern. We also have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard, we'll see you on the track.